Hey, that's my Instagram. That's my second Instagram account. It's called Deadman GTA, where I post GTA pictures every day. But anyway, what we're gonna do now is create a new profile picture for this account, which is why I'm going through my existing pictures of my profile. I mean, nah, not feeling this. Not feeling it. Let's try this. Nah, nah, not feeling it. Not feeling it. Yeah, this image is way better. I need to find where it is. Where is that image? It's from the video, so it must be in DBC thoughts. 2023. No, 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 no. Mood is flight. Yeah, mood is flight. This is the current image. No matter what I do, I'm no good without you, and I can't get enough. Must be love on the brain. It's kind of feeling this way. Let me save it as a shipping. The X's are quite big, but it's fine. Alright, what do we do now? Let's read some. Yeah, before that I'll give you a short preview of what I've done so far on okay, so there's a project called Mood is Fly, and this is the rough cut. That's it. That's it. it it's not satisfactory, so I've dumped it, ditched it for now. I might pick that up in the future though. What is this? Alright, this is Gandhi Naked Ambition. I'm gonna read some Gandhi Naked Ambition now, and in the meantime, I'll have some into. I'll have a I'll have a sweet slideshow playing. Alright, while that's going in the background, I'm gonna start reading Gandhi Naked Ambition, Chapter 4, Challenge and Chastity. The Indian National Congress had been set up to give political representation to the middle class that was emerging in Indian society in the late 19th century. It was started by Alan Hume, a British theosophist who had worked for the Indian civil service until he resigned, irritated at being denied promotion because he was too pro-native. At his suggestion, a meeting of Indians had been held in Bombay in 1885, at which the proceedings began with a declaration of loyalty to Britain and a statement that their objective was not political independence but a better deal for Indian professionals. The Congress quickly took on the aspirations of educated Indians and absorbed such organizations as Dadabhai Nauroji's Indian National Association. Thereafter, the lawyers and administrators of Congress met once a year to discuss how to acquire a role in the government. Though Congress aimed to represent all educated Indians, fault lines were evident from its inception. Muslims tended to view the organization as skeptically because of its Hindu majority, despite the presence in its ranks of such Muslim activists as Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Orthodox Hindus, on the other hand, were suspicious of the Westernized outlook of the Congress. They would have preferred a Hinduized discourse that put the preservation of their tradition at the center of political life. Nor was Congress in its early years of any interest to the common people. It made no attempt to address issues such as poverty and the lack of essential services in health and education. Over the years, Gandhi was to struggle with all these issues, attempting to unite in Congress activities the three interest groups: the masses of India, whose principal concern was day-to-day existence, Muslim activists, and Orthodox Hindus. Having settled his wife and children at the family home in Rajkot, Gandhi went on to his first Congress meeting in Calcutta. He used the train journey to lobby traveling delegates on behalf of a resolution advancing the interests of South African Indians. The lordly Feroz Shah Mehta told him they could do nothing for Indians in the colonies when they did not have rights in their own country. At the conference venue, Gandhi made his customary inspection of the sanitary arrangements and, as usual, found them disgusting. He complained to the volunteers who had come to help with the meeting, but they were not interested, considering such work to be fit only for untouchables. Gandhi asked for a broom and cleaned a latrine. Later, he invited volunteers to help him clean feces from the veranda outside the dormitory where they were staying, where delegates had defecated during the night. They declined, so he found a broom and did it himself. Gandhi made a point of seeking out leading Congress members and renewing his acquaintance with some, such as Tilak and Gokhale, whom he had previously met. For Bal Gangadhar Tilak, also known as Lokamanya, beloved of the people, Western institutions were a means to an end, to independence and a reassertion of Hindu national character. Tilak had entered active politics when the British raised the age of consent to 12 in 1891, after a child bride had died of sexual injuries. Oh man. Such interference with religious practice could not be tolerated. What? He later served the prison term for incitement to murder after publishing inflammatory articles quoting the Bhagavad Gita, saying that no blame could be attached to anyone who selflessly killed an oppressor, after which a Briton administrator was assassinated. Gandhi admired but kept his distance from Tilak. Man, this is messed up. Far more amenable to Gandhi's approach was Gopal Krishna Gokhale, head of the moderates, who admired the means and methods of the West and worked with him, though not fought for British structures. He campaigned for social justice via such organizations as the Servants of India Society. It was not a Congress priority, and acted more as a Gladstonian liberal than as an Indian nationalist. Indeed, he models much of his approach on that of Gladstone. Gandhi hero worshipped him, calling him my political guru and treating him as a political father figure, though Gokhale was only 3 years older than him. Gandhi's first experience of constitutional democracy was not a positive one. There were lengthy speeches on major resolutions, all of which had some well-known leader to back them. The final resolutions which the subjects committee came to late at night when everyone wanted to get away were rushed through without real consideration. Gandhi's resolution on support for South African Indians had the backing of Gokhale, who spoke up for Gandhi when the meeting was almost over. With that mark of approval, rather than any objective sense of the importance of the motion, he was permitted to speak for 5 minutes. He started, but in these unfamiliar surroundings, the facility he had acquired for public speaking in South Africa departed him. He read the resolution and began his introductory remarks, but despite all his lobbying, he had not taken the time to study procedure. When the bell was rung to signal that he had used 3 minutes of his time, he assumed he was telling him that his time was up, and sat down. He felt hurt because he had seen important delegates speaking for half an hour and no bell had rung for them. His resolution was accepted, but none were rejected, this was a qualified success. Both Gandhi and the Congress had a good deal to learn about running a successful political meeting. Nor had he endeared himself to the leadership by blaming the Indian National Congress for not acting to defend Indians in the Transvaal and Orange Free State, concluding that had no steps been taken in Nadal, the position would be definitely worse there than it is. In other words, had Gandhi not organized the Indians in Nadal, their situation would be as bad as that in the Boer republics, which was a questionable proposition at best. Gandhi had hoped to make an impression at Congress, but this first foray into national politics had not been encouraging. In Calcutta, after the Congress session, he stayed with Gokhale, who introduced him to important people and praised his habits of self-reliance. Gandhi made so bold as to advise his mentor on his way of life, explaining the virtues of the simple life, such as that of walking rather than taking a carriage or a train. Gokhale listened indulgently, but he did not change his lifestyle. Seeing animals sacrificed at a temple of Kali in Calcutta made Gandhi reflect that life of a lamb is no precious than that of a human being, a belief he shared with the Jains of his native Gujarat. He had read about the Hindu reforming organization the Brahmo Samaj and now met some of its members. Later he travelled to Benares, where, as usual, when he visited holy sites, he was disgusted by the filth. While there, he called in to see Annie Besant, leader of the Theosophists, thus maintaining his contact with the religious movement that had informed his own views. He left Gokhale in order to make a tour through India from Calcutta to his home in Rajkot, during which, in a way that would be recognized as pure Gandhi, he chose to travel third class on the trains. He carried a food box given to him by Gokhale, a long coat to keep him warm, a canvas bag, and a water jug. He was at the time still wearing the coat and trousers of a Parsi. He had traveled both third and first class in Europe and found little difference between the basic amenities. In India, Gandhi was appalled at the indifference of the railway authorities to the comfort of third class passengers and at the dirty and inconsiderate habits of passengers themselves, which included smoking, spitting, and throwing rubbish on the floors. Gandhi's idea was of improving matters was to propose that educated men should make a point of traveling third class and reforming the habits of the people. Gokhale had told Gandhi to settle down in his home area to work as a barrister and make a contribution to the work of Congress. He arrived back in Rajkot in February 1902, then settled in Bombay, which was a better location for political action. He was different about resuming practice, remembering his past failures and having no love for the conventions of the bar. But he found that his experience in South Africa and his diligent attention to the Indian Evidence Act had produced a good lawyer out of unpromising material. Without the obligations of earning a living, he would never have taken to the law, but he practiced medicine, his own form of it, simply because he enjoyed it and could immediately see its value. During this trip to India, 10-year-old Manilal was stricken with both pneumonia and typhoid. There was no effective treatment except to keep the patient comfortable and strong enough for the immune system to fight off the infections. A Parsi doctor told Gandhi his son needed eggs and chicken broth. Gandhi told him that as the family was strictly vegetarian, it was out of the question to give him either. The doctor advised him not to be so hard on his son, but he felt that it was only in such cases that a man's faith was truly tested. Oh God, what's gonna happen? Gandhi decided personally to administer to Manilal hydropathic treatment as set out in the work of a German writer, Louis Kuhn, who saw disease as the result of morbid matter entering the body. Treatment was the elimination of this matter by water baths, wrapping the patient in wet sheets and other bathing related practices. To this Gandhi added fasting, which could also be tied with profit, so Manilal was put on a diet of orange juice and water together with frequent 3-minute heat baths. Gandhi was genuinely haunted by fears that he was foisting his fads on children, but the child's fever broke, and Manilal recovered, confirming Gandhi in his confidence in the nature cure. He was further to confirm that the curative abilities of his remedies when treated with the broken arm of 80-year-old Ramdas with earth poultices. He henceforth used earth, water, and fasting for a variety of ailments. Gandhi's legal practice in India was soon providing him with a living, his South African clients in particular stayed in contact, supplying him with work that needed to be done on the subcontinent. On leaving South Africa, Gandhi had promised to return if he were needed. Just as he was settling in, he heard that the British Secretary of State for the Colonies, Joseph Chamberlain, was visiting South Africa as part of wound healing exercises after the Boer War. The Indian community wanted to present their case to Chamberlain and felt they needed Gandhi to help them with it. I'm going to try to read faster. So Gandhi left his family in November 92 and sailed off expecting to be away for less than a year. The war had ended with the expectation of all 4 colonies uniting under one government. In the event, there was no quick progression to union, but each colony continued with its own legislature, and the Boers refused to have anything to do with the British central government. This was the situation that confronted Chamberlain. As the Boer War had supposedly been fought in order to promote just rule in South Africa, the Indians thought they had a reasonable chance of a fair hearing. There was a good deal of confusion over this, but many Europeans as well as Indians believed that anti-Indian ordinances had gone with the Boer defeat. Certainly, anti-British laws had been repealed. Chamberlain received Gandhi's natal delegation coldly, however. The government had made no policy statement on the position of Indians. That of the natives was considered paramount. Chamberlain acknowledged that the Indians' grievances appeared genuine, but stressed that the imperial government had little control over self-governing colonies, and if the Indians wanted to live in an area dominated by Europeans, they had best try to placate their immediate masters. Having made such representation in Natal, Gandhi aimed to head next for the Transvaal, where the Boers were still predominant, in order to represent Indian concerns about their treatment. But permits were needed to travel to the Transvaal, and the Indians found it hard to obtain them. Gandhi asked his old friend Alexander, the police superintendent, who obtained the pass for him. When Gandhi arrived, the Asiatic Department was set to arrest him until they found he had a permit, which enraged them. The Assistant Colonial Secretary then received Gandhi and other delegates and rudely explained that Gandhi would not be allowed to see Chamberlain. In the event, Gandhi's place was taken by another Indian barrister, but Chamberlain was no more encouraging in Pretoria than he had been in Natal. It was an experience that would make May want to leave the region and not go back. Characteristically, given his courage in the face of danger and his willingness to enlist for a long struggle, the setback led Gandhi to feel he must stay in South Africa, particularly in the Transvaal where the oppression was worst. He set up a practice in the legal district of Johannesburg with 4 Indian clerks and a Scottish secretary. Soon he was to found a party, the British Indian Association. In rejoining the battle in Africa, he was to present himself as a servant of the people, moving from larger service in India to a smaller region where he was needed more. In fact, he had met with no great success in public work in India, and he was finding in South Africa the political and professional opportunities that had been denied him in his home country. His first political job in South Africa was to clean up the Asiatic department, which was run by people whose experience of government had been gained on the Indian subcontinent and who were contemptuous of those whose interests were they were supported to protect. At least some of them were actively corrupt. Let's switch out the light. I don't know how this is gonna look. After permit restrictions had been relaxed for Europeans, it became apparent that Indians and other Asians such as the Chinese were obliged to pay bribes to officials, putting an unfair burden on them. It also meant that permits to travel and work in the Transvaal were awarded on the basis of ability to pay rather than the needs of the territory. Gandhi collected evidence of the bribes and took it to the police commissioner, who listened patiently. It was the second time Gandhi had found a senior police officer in South Africa to be just and fair. He examined Gandhi's witnesses and was satisfied with the evidence but lamented that it was difficult to get a white jury to convict a white offender against non-whites. Gandhi refined his evidence and narrowed the case down to two officers against whom he had irrefutable proof, and warrants were issued against them. One of them absconded, but the police commissioner brought him back. They were tried, but despite the evidence, the jury acquitted them. Gandhi was becoming disgusted with the whole legal system, but the case had drawn attention to genuine abuses and both officers were usually dismissed from their posts. The importance of honesty was reaffirmed and the Indian community reassured. Furthermore, Gandhi's position was considerably enhanced, bringing him more business. Gandhi now again brought his family to South Africa. He felt he must take personal responsibility for them for two reasons. He wanted to tell his brother he would remit no more money to him, and he was about to cancel the insurance policy he had taken out earlier in order to protect his family in the event of his death. Gandhi had struggled spiritually with his obligations towards family. He had formed a study group with some theosophers looking at Hindu scriptures in both translation and the original. The Bhagavad Gita now became the subject of the primary in-depth study of his life. He took the learning sections by heart while he did his morning ablutions, and in this way committed 13 chapters to memory. He came to regard the Gita as an infallible guide of conduct. It became my dictionary of. He knew very well it was not God directly, but his brother Lakshmi Das. Oh God, this is too boring now. Okay, I'm actually gonna stop here and continue this sometime in the future because this is too freaking boring. This is too freaking boring. I'm gonna pick this up sometime in the future. Then I'll see you then. Bye bye. 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 Bye bye.